spread, I would like you to go first. Okay? So we'll live in this space, these two mats. If it expands out kind of behind that, but that's fine. I want you to do Carenza. I'm going to start music. So each of us are going to do one at a time, and we're specifically, so everybody get into a line where you can all see. So let's kind of spread out a little bit. Because the point of it today, yeah, go ahead and come on up, you guys. The point of it today is some observation. Because you all train the same thing, you should ideally be able to recognize and pick out particular methods when someone's doing a thing, right? So we're going to watch and try to specifically observe, not to just go, what does this look like, but what do I notice? What do I think that they are doing in, when they're doing it? So, and then we'll talk about it a little bit after each one. Okay? So, all right, I'm going to start you some music and you can kind of get started, okay? So, you haven't done this as much, so here's what I want you to think about. Over time, we have gone over and taught you different things. Sagang sagawas. Ala contra, maybe doble cara, maybe gunting, different things, right? I want you to picture those and apply them while you're doing your Carenza. We're going to watch and see if we can pick up on what you're doing without you having to tell us what you're doing. Does that make sense? Okay, so I want you to picture your opponent, work through, and it doesn't even have to be your opponent. I want to mention that for the purpose of this. It could also be your partner, right? So in this case, be like, I want this to be like when I'm working with somebody here on the mat, and this is maybe a drill that we would do, or maybe this is a way that we would do something. It doesn't always have to be something offensive. It's about exploring the skill that you have, not necessarily about always defeating someone else. Does that make sense? Have you any questions? Okay, well, I'm going to start you. I'm going to pick, perhaps, we will do this one. And time. Nicely done. First we do this. All right. So, asked to you first, what do you guys see?
Initial stepping, sayao, saw a reverse roof block in there, saw good movement. There's a lot in there. Excellent job.
Yeah.
He focused on striking and
I'd agree with that.
not so much defending,
More
attacking.
Yeah.
Smooth movement as well, like very smooth movement.
Yeah, it was very smooth. It's very smooth. In fact, I'd say that was one of your more smooth ones that you've done. Will, what did you think?
I did a good job of breaking at the angles.
Yeah.
I fall victim to that quite a bit of just using 4 directions, but you broke it. It was good.
Yeah. So now your turn. What were you thinking about when you did that? What came to your mind?
A lot of strikes and not that much blocks.
Mm-hmm. You obviously chose to make sure you weren't moving around, or that you weren't staying in one place too much. You moved quite a bit, quite well. Yeah. So was that intentional? Were you thinking, hey, I want to keep moving, I want to change angles? Mm-hmm. Nice. Very good. Gage, you want to go? All right, Fred. All right, Gage. So same concept. Yeah. So we'll just roll with that.
With your chopstick.
And good there. I didn't want to stop that one. That was really, really good. Yeah, that was very good. It's going to be hard to beat the level of diversity in that Carenza. It was very. You went through a lot of different things. So, for the purposes of audio, who's going first? Who wants to talk first? Yeah.
Nobody talks. So there's a lot going on there. Very excellent footwork, great use of direction. I mean, the footwork was pretty much flawless, I think, honestly. Like, that was excellent. I saw cruzada blocks, I saw wing blocks, I saw umbrella blocks, I saw USA stepping in and out with those blocks, and counter strikes afterwards. Saw floretes. I saw redondos. Excellent use of that. The counter striking that we should be doing. Stepping back and block then strike. I think that's a key component of this art in general. So, it is was excellent job. It was very nice.
Nice.
There's a lot of variance, and I mean, nothing that Matt hasn't already said, but just in the aspect of changing directions, changing height or levels, that was also really good. You definitely like your roof block. That's probably about as repetitive as it got, though. Otherwise, it was very varied. So good stuff.
Yeah.
There was a point when I was like, is he gonna win? Because I could exactly imagine where the opponent is, and I'm like, is he gonna make it? And so I don't know, like Gage is so analytical, and he sees the opponent when he does a Carenza, and not just one. Like, oh, maybe if someone attacks me from the back here. So I love that, how quick that was. And so, like, it sucked me in. It was like watching a fighting scene in a movie, but there wasn't somebody else. But I saw it in my head. And I think that's really important. Like, you got this skill to understand, okay, I need to picture whoever is attacking me. And you try to think of, like, as many different ways how you can defend it. You also thought about the many different ways they can attack you. And I really liked that. So, really good. And there was a retake. Nobody said that yet. So.
It was a retake. Yeah. What do you think, Fred?
There was a lot of blocks. I saw an elbow strike in there.
Yeah.
A few windmills with the stick.
Yep. Redondo.
And it was good. I love the footwork. You went all different directions, and I really liked it.
Yeah. It was good. Your turn. Whoa. Yep. That's the mic. Yeah. What were you thinking about?
What I was thinking about is really just like fighting myself, or just fighting as best I could, and basically fighting my shadow and trying to be faster and not predictable. So, yeah, I was kind of just fighting with myself, really. It was
I love it.
Pretty cool.
I love it. Okay, that's awesome. Yeah, I think that's you.
Did you say one stick or?
That's your choice. Also, since we'll probably do the same. Actually, I'm going to go the opposite order. You're going to go first. Talk in this time, so we'll work the mic back this way. So double stick. Okay, and then let me look, because the one thing I wanted to see is, just want to make sure that we're not. Yeah. So for the purposes of review, and this is for everybody, try to stay front of this line. Technically, the camera can see past that, but it starts getting cut off.
So hang on. When you say front of this line, you mean all of this?
Yes.
Okay.
Since I said be here, try to stay on this side of that line.
Somewhere over the concrete.
Yeah.
Got it. Am I getting fancy music?
Yeah, you're getting some fancy music.
Okay, I won't be Elsie. Oh, no.
time.
Thank you.
There was a lot of stabs for the stomach and shoulders. I really liked that. And you made sure not to stay in one spot, one corner. And there was a lot of strikes. And yeah, I really liked it.
Cool.
Very smooth and powerful.
Oh, yes.
I liked how you didn't make it predictable. Like, you didn't do any 2 strikes over again. Like, really, any 5 strikes over again. You did a lot of, you like your guillotine a lot.
Yeah.
I saw that. It was really good, though. The places you put them, you didn't do them over and over again. It was really nice. Saw some umbrella blocks, some cool stuff.
I think you need some work. No, it was good. I do like the fact that even though you had 2 sticks, you didn't feel the need to involve both of them all of the time. There was times where using a single stick was appropriate, so that way it's not just kind of running over much of the same. There's a lot of good movement, not staying in one place, but also kind of tracking where that other opponent would be. So overall, I think good.
Going along with what he said, picking that line and following it until it was done. You know, like you said, tracking the opponent. So you picked that line. You know, you defended, then you picked that line, finished it, went on to the next thing, and moved very, very fluidly. Very good. The gunting, that's one of my favorites. And get it out of the way. Hit 'em. Love it. Love it. Very nice.
Yeah. And then, yeah, so something I wanted to point out was, I have my own.
Oh, yeah.
Something I wanted to point out is it was actually very linear. It wasn't very angular. You didn't actually move around a lot. But that was not a bad thing because it was linear in a way that was effective. It seemed very obvious to me that the majority of the angle that we would take was 180 degrees. I move around and then I deal from the back. Rather than circling around or having to choose different angles, most of the time you stayed forward and back. But I never once felt like that was a detriment to what you were doing. I could see clearly that what was happening was intentional. The movement was intentional. And sometimes it would veer, it would be just to the left of that line, still moving on that line, but it wasn't necessarily right on that line. So you'd shift off and then kind of move in there and stuff. So that's uncommon, maybe sometimes. But you know, somebody who doesn't know a lot of what's going on could see that and be like, well, you didn't really move around a lot. But I think it's important to point out that I felt that was very intentional and very well done.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, what was I thinking? I was thinking I actually learned more about what I was doing when you guys were saying it than when I was doing it. But I did want to focus on the opponent and using the 2 sticks effectively. I think that's what William said, where sometimes I just don't use the left stick. But I wanted to challenge myself and do 2 sticks because the left hand is always kind of just not in use, but I wanted to use it effectively to keep the opponent in place to then do what Matt said, strike again and finish it. So yeah, that's what I was thinking. I just wanted to challenge myself with 2 sticks, honestly.
I love it. I think that was great. I think it went very well.
So, okay. Thank you. I can seal it up. Oh, sorry. There you go.
Clap on the clapper.
All right, and Will. And time.
The movement was amazing. I loved how you went from up, down, up, and I saw a few handle strikes, some 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s. It was just really good. Good job.
Mario, you did. I could tell you were in Mario most of the whole time. I didn't see you go into Largo. But when you went into Corto a couple of times with those handle strikes, I was like, ooh. But you did really good. A lot of different strikes, which I really liked, and good footwork. And though you were going very smoothly, I could tell it was all very precise, which was very, very cool to see. But I really liked it.
I think you're always thinking about how to apply it with a different weapon as well. Because I know that you have different tools every day, not just a long weapon. You might think about how to work a knife. And I like that your brain is going there while you're doing a Carenza. Because you, especially how you employed the punya.
Punya is the
Punyo.
front.
The
yeah.
punyo. You know, that I know it's effective, you know it's effective, and I know you, in your head, you go through different sorts of weapons that you can use that with, not just with a stick. And I actually like that you kind of went off the mat, because that your usual fighting ground is not a mat. And so there might be a sidewalk or something, and so maybe it was intentional. I'm gonna say that. Just to show, you see, that's what I'm gonna have to do every day anyway. Fight on a different kind of ground. So anyway, but yeah, I like that. I think you're in your Carenza, even though you don't have another weapon right now, you're thinking about how to use a different weapon. So I don't know if that was intentional, but I think so. Okay, Matt.
I just want to say that I love this, and I've watched all these guys do these over the past few weeks, and it's been amazing. Like the directions, like even watching yourself, like that was amazing. Watching the directional change, and then from watching from the past few weeks, like I said, I like the wrist grab on the turn. So I noticed that you do that on the turn. I like that a lot, actually. So it helps that, and it, you know, maybe I can grab it again if they try to grab it, you know, something like that. Excellent use of all the technique too, by the way. The kicks, the floretes, all of it was very well put in place where it needed to be. So footwork, excellent as well. Level changes, all that, excellent, excellent.
I think this is probably the best Carenza you've done so far. And while it seems maybe natural that the next one is always the best one, it's not that way, right? It's not. There's sometimes that you go and it just wasn't as good as last time, but you know, over even just the last few weeks, I've seen a lot of growth in that, specifically in your footwork and in the visualization of it, which I want to see and I'm happy to see. There was a pace, quickly, before I forget. Rhythm changing was something that you were doing, was you were going, and there were times when it was fast and times when it was slow, and there were times when it was fast too slow, and I thought it was very interesting. I'm a sucker for that, so I like that. So your Carenza is very slow and controlled. But even in that, I see a smoothness that you haven't always had. And that's really important, because as you start to add power to your Carenza over time, that smoothness is affecting everything that you do. So it's beautiful to see that it's taking place and that it's being done intentionally. The footwork was fantastic. That was probably the thing I was the most excited about because I think that's one of the areas that has been harder for you in Carenza is just, where am I moving? And yes, level changes, yes, different directions, losing yourself to it for a minute. I have a different feeling of why you went off the mat, and it's because for a minute that you just weren't thinking about that. It was, you were in this space, and you ran out of this space. And that happens. So very, very happy with that. I'll leave it there.
Yeah, y'all are kind. So, no, I mean, the biggest things here is I was just trying to apply a lot of the lessons learned from the last Carenza, where not being wholly sure of what it is I should have been doing the first time is where it was just kind of like me versus the world in all directions, but really four. Versus this time was more focused on a singular entity, so to speak. Bigger thing is I was trying to have some measure of variance without falling into the same like 3 moves. Yeah, basically, and that's something that I know that I do need to work on, is kind of finding where those movements link and how they play together. So I know that's something that I do need to work on. Yeah, the mat aspect was definitely getting lost in trying to think about the purposeful meaning application of what it is I'm doing. I'm not just flailing. It's going to be something that's hopefully going to be doing something that would work and would make sense and something I would actually do. But just me. So thank you.
It's just like, yeah, no, this is very good. Matt will go here in just a second, but this has been excellent, and I hope that you guys are starting to see the value of it. That there are many people who would argue that this part of the art could just be taken out, and it'd be more effective if you didn't waste time on it and you spent time on other things. I wholeheartedly disagree. I believe that it's incredibly important. It can't be the only thing you do. You have to have contact with another person. You have to deal with the unpredictability of a person. One thing that's really hard to visualize is visualizing somebody being unpredictable. And so no matter how much we visualize, it's very difficult to fully replicate what it would be like to be interacting with someone. And so you have to have that. You have to have your drills. You have to have your contact. You have to know what it feels like to fix your alignment because of power or things like that. For you delivering power, or you receiving power, you have to be able to deal with that unpredictability. You have to be able to spar. You have to be able to work in a, not so much sparring, but what I find more valuable than sparring is dealing with aggression. And the way I define the difference is sparring is typically both people are equal parts give and take. Even in the most aggressive sparring matches, I have rarely ever seen somebody stay fully aggressive the whole time. They might burst longer than the normal person, but then they pull back, they see what's happening, they test range, they do things that somebody who has intent to harm doesn't do. They go in and they continue to go in, and they continue to go, and as things don't work, they continue to do more. They don't just pull out and say, well, let me just back up. They don't stop to see, well, what is his range? Because somebody wanting to do harm to you doesn't care what your range is. They only care what their range is and whether or not they're using it right now, right? And so you need those two, the drills where someone is attacking and you are handling it, but it's not a give and take. It's a take, really. It's a take for them initially, and it's you needing to have the ability to take it from them, what I would call taking sente, where they were the person in charge and you need to take the control of the situation and handle the situation. And that ability to do that is really important and something that Carenza will not give, right? But there is so much value, and I hope that you're seeing that as you do it. I can tell that every one of you is getting more comfortable doing it, that actually doing Carenza is something that's not nearly as awkward or uncomfortable or maybe even embarrassing as it is when it begins. And it is that way. I don't pretend that it's not. When you first start, especially like this, you know, one thing I'll point out, and Matt's not going to do it because I just told him by saying Matt's not going to do it. You know, one thing that I notice is everybody lives on that mat or further until I put the restriction and said, don't go past that line. And then they just lived on that mat. What I believe that is your subconscious desire to be out of the spotlight. To be not as close, but I mean, we're all more than capable. There's plenty of space. You could get way closer. So I don't think that it's so much a thing of, I'm afraid that I could accidentally swing and hit somebody. I think it's, I really don't necessarily want this attention on me, and I'm pulling away from it. And insofar as I'm even getting behind this light, I just don't even want to be in that space. I could be full of shit, but I don't think I am. You know, we don't, it's hard to get up in front of people to do this. Over time, we get past that. But
I think I see value in it a lot more. I don't see why people don't like it. I mean, it adds so much more fluidity to everything. You know, like it gets everything put together. You know, sorry. It adds so much more fluidity to it, and it gets everything put together. You know, it doesn't. It's not broken apart so much as when we're drilling, when we're doing different things. You know. But yeah.
yeah, it's like a glue, right? Yeah.
Oh, when you're finished.
But I don't see why it's a you know, something that's lost, and creativity too. You know, when putting all these pieces, like I said, putting all these pieces together, you being your own unpredictability, how you put things together. How I put things together is different than how everybody else in this class puts things together. What I'm going to do next is different, you know. So it's the same, but it's different. So
Yeah. It's the same reason why people don't like kata and things like that, is the argument is always, it's not so much that it's useless, it's that I should be spending my time on something else, that there's more value in doing something other than this. And so if I cut this out, I have more time for the other stuff. That's what I see when people have those feelings about it, is they go, I should be doing something else. I don't agree with it. Obviously, I think that it needs time devoted to it, but it.
well, time and direction, like the direction you're giving us too, as we do this. You know, this time I want to see this added to this. You know, I want to see both hands. I want to see functionality this time. You know, I want to see fluidity, more foot movement. You know, that's just a guide overall to all of us, and it helps. You know, like, okay, this is where I can improve on my stuff. You know, it's an overall improvement rather than a focused improvement.
No, I agree completely on that, with the addition of where the thought process may come from, and this is purely speculative, that this is not useful is because it's not working on the drills and the things that you had mentioned. However, the useful aspect of it is the fact that you have to find where those connections are, and you have to work them in a way that's not a 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5 just constantly over and over and over again. And then also I think the other inherent avoidance to it is just the fact that to the outside observer it looks like you're just sitting here swinging a stick, when in all reality you're kind of laying your skill completely bare for everybody to see, and it's very intimidating to get up in front of a group of people and be like, okay, this is how great and terrible I am at the same time, and then be critiqued.
No
on it.
secrets,
Yeah,
here I am.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just much in that same vein that the body can never go where the mind has never been.
I wanted to, when you broke, I was going to say that line. Like,
Yep,
that's
been waiting to say it.
good.
So yeah, it's until you do it here, it would not make any sense to do it elsewhere, much less in an actual fight, just because you've never devoted time to doing it. So the likelihood of it being successful is low, on top of the fact that it's going to be awkward, it's going to be less effective just because you haven't had time to practice it.
Yeah. One of my favorite things about it is the times that I fail, that I try to chain something together and it just doesn't work. That's one of my favorite times, because then I either figure out what I need to do to change it, or I figure out this is a thing that's not going to be able to, like, I can't string this to this. I might be able to string this to this to this and use this other movement to chain those together smoothly, but if I just go from here to here, it fails for these reasons. You know, I really like the times that I see what I can't do. And so that you can really spend time exploring how to either be able to do it, because maybe I can't do it because I just need to, all right, and I will do it. If I'm doing Carenza on my own, I will literally stop and just isolate that thing, do it over and over and over again for a while, and then once I start feeling comfortable with it, then I start blending back into the rest of the stuff. But it allows for me to go, I'm not comfortable with this. Why? Am I not comfortable because it doesn't make sense for it? Can I think of a reason based in physics or science of why this wouldn't work and why my body's not able to do that? Or is it something where I just need to become better at it? And if so, let me rep it. And okay, now that the edges are starting to smooth out, maybe I can put it back into place, or maybe I can see how to get there, and then figure out how do I get to this space or out of this space? What are the places that lead into, what are the entries to this, and what are the exits to this? Those are some of my favorite things that I think it's really hard to find time for that when you're drilling. You know, like you can, but the thing is when you're drilling and when you're sparring, when you're drilling, you tend to get the same thing over and over and over again because people are consistent. Unless you're training with someone of decent skill and experience, more so experience, then you're probably not going to get somebody who's going to fabricate changes into what you're doing to be able to teach you to manage it, right? Instead, you're going to get somebody who's going to feed you that angle one, and the last 10 angle ones were almost identical. And so you have repped being good at exactly one motion, and if anybody deviates, well, you're not as good at that because you've never done it. Where, you know, if you have someone with experience, they can deviate speed and timing, power, distance, angle, all of those things in a constructive way. I don't just tell people to do it because somebody who doesn't have that experience can do that in a non-constructive way. And it can, you know, there's a big difference between slightly adjusting my angle one to feeding you an angle three instead, you know. And when you take someone without experience and you say, you know, hey, make sure to change it up sometimes, they'll just feed something entirely different, not deviate a little bit. They'll just be, I'm off over here. And so without that, you don't get that experience of those changes and how it can be that way. And then sparring, here is, in my opinion, one of the primary failures of sparring in a club. Like sparring tournament or something like this still applies, but if say you spar competitively and you're dealing with other people, but like it will still happen, but not as much. In your own club, when you're sparring, people naturally tend to have three things that they really like to do. Three things that they feel like they're successful at, feel that they do well. And they might deviate a little bit, but they keep coming back to one of those three things. And if they're really good, maybe they've got 4 or 5, you know. And we naturally do it because we want to win, so we do the thing that's working, what's working. And then we find the things, what works almost every time, no matter who I'm working with. Well, now I'm going to do that all the time. And there's value in knowing what that thing is, but it also means that when you're dealing with that person, you are continuing to only really defend the same 3 things over and over again. And B, when you develop the ability to manage it and succeed, you've really only done that because you had the ability to observe that that's what they like to do. Without having that opportunity to see that this is what this person likes to do, you can't deploy your strategy for success. And that's not a thing that we get in reality. We don't get an opportunity to dance with you for a while, figure out what you like, and then see how you can accomplish doing something about it. We don't get that opportunity, so we have to be able to manage that at speed in real time. And that is, in my opinion, that's one of the largest failures of sparring and how sparring fails to allow us to transfer those skills to a different context. In the context of sparring and in the context of competitive sparring, it's perfect. You should be doing that. You should be isolating and excelling at a particular skill. And if you can be really good at a thing, why would you spend your time trying to be good at everything when you could just spend your time being great at a few things, which is something you do as an athlete, right? You spend that time. Because you also know that there are artificial constraints. I'm probably always going to spar in the same division with people of similar size and weight, who typically, because of their size and weight, will fight in one of these three ways. You know, and so there's a level of I already know before we fight what to expect from you. And then once we start fighting, or I see you fight, I know the rest. And you should strive for that understanding if you're going to spar or fight competitively. You need that. And you'd be a fool to try not to. Because if you intend to succeed, you do the thing that leads to success. And the context in that case is to win. It's to win according to the rules. But there's a thing called the byproduct myth. The byproduct myth says that if I get really good at that, then I could do these things also. If I'm really good, if I can compete and win all the time, then I can defend myself. And that's the byproduct myth. It's a myth because it's not true. You might be better than average at managing some things because of that skill set, but it's not a one-for-one. Because you have trained this way, you are automatically going to be good at other contexts, because you're not. You know, a really simple way to put it in perspective is if you constantly train in a ring and then the first time you're attacked is in a bathroom stall, your context is drastically different and your skill set is suddenly needing to be something that it isn't normally. You're used to using space, you're used to using tactics like ring control and things like that suddenly just don't exist.
Not pointing fingers.
and hell, on top of that, your pants could be down. You know? These are things that, as long as you understand the context, I don't have any problem with chasing those ideals. But one thing that I do get asked a fair bit by, not necessarily by people here, but people that know that we do what we do, I do get asked, well, how often do you spar? And I haven't, I mean, I answered them, but I haven't really said that as much in here, and this is why. This is why. This is something that, you know, at one of the seminars, one of the students, Maestro Mike, asked, you know, how often do you guys spar? Do you guys spar? Because Maestro Mike doesn't really spar. And he doesn't really have a spar. And, you know, and I was honest, I said, we do spar sometimes. You know, especially at that time, we were sparring more pre-COVID when we could share around a helmet and some gloves and stuff without it being a weird thing. We did it more. Once COVID hit, it was like, well, suddenly, if we are going to do it, everybody needs to own their own equipment because we can't just go trading equipment, especially that we're going to get super sweaty and gross in. Which
I was always last, by the way.
you're always last.
I think that if you're in competition too, you know, like you can watch somebody in competition and say like, oh, like you see them do that same move over and over again, and they might be winning with that move, but you see them do that same move, and people do that.
Oh, yeah.
Battlefields too, you know, they see you doing that. Okay,
Oh,
you
yeah.
can do this.
Know
okay, you can do this.
thy enemy,
He
right?
just did that same thing 3 times in a row. He killed those 3 guys, but you know.
Don't let them do that
then,
to you.
Exactly. I'm going to watch for that.
Yeah.
I'm going to defend
Well, and
that
professional
exactly.
fighters, they're watching videos of other people's fights.
Absolutely.
To go, how do you fight?
Yeah. I
And-
know you like to do that. Yeah. So
Yeah.
there's.
One of my favorite scenes in, I don't know if you guys have seen the movie Blood and Bone.
Yeah.
Michael Jai White.
Yeah.
Love that movie. It's super fun. It's a great, and Michael Jai White is a fantastic martial artist. But in the movie, there's scenes like that where he's basically doing some street fights for money, but he has a different goal than the money. But as he's coming into these situations, he's looking around and he's watching people warm up and prepare. And so like one of the guys, he's seeing that he's constantly working this roundhouse on a pad, and he's going, cool. When he got called to fight that guy, he stood up and he went and he kind of brought his arms up in a way that just left that wide open, knowing that that guy would take the bait of, this is the thing I love to do, I practice a lot, and it's wide open. And as soon as he went for it, he took it away from him and just one hit wrecked him, you know, because of that. And so even that moment of being able to look around and be like, what are you doing? What are you doing with your coach? What are you going over? What are you thinking about? Competitively, that exists. In other contexts, the only time that would exist in what I will term real violence, in my limited understanding, is a couple cases in my mind. I'll pick 3. First is in domestic violence. If I've seen the person in my family who is doing that violence to someone else, I probably have an understanding of what that will look like when it's my turn. Maybe not, though. Then you think in terms of inner group violence. So for the lack of a good way to put it otherwise, we'll say gang violence. If inside the gang violence, I have seen the people around me and the things that they do, and if they ever decide to turn on me, I'm aware of what they do because I've seen them do it to other people, right? And then the last one being, if you are dealing with a situation, say there are certain types of attacks or things happening in your area, then you might be aware of it from reports or footage of it happening to other people prior to. So going, okay, this has happened to 6 different businesses this week. If this happens in my business, this is probably what it's going to look like. Those are some of the only examples I can give of when you would actually know what that particular thing might, and still might be, is a might, look like prior to it occurring, to be able to make any kind of basis on that decision. Kind of following where I'm going there. Like outside of that, like you just don't know. And unfortunately in those situations, if you're the first one, in literally every single one of those situations, if you are the first one, you don't know what it looks like yet. Other people will benefit from your experience, but you don't. If you are the first person in your family to receive domestic abuse, you don't know what it looks like, and unfortunately, you also are still stuck with that idea that you don't believe that person would do that, and then you've got that component. You know, if you're a business owner and businesses are being attacked in a certain way, if you're the first one, up until yesterday, it was a thing that happened in other places in the world, not your place. And now it's something that you're having to manage. These are huge components of why I like to separate and think differently. Not because I don't believe it's necessary. We have sparred and we will spar more. And like I said, if people want to get their own equipment, that will make it easier for us to be able to achieve it. Because right now we just can't without danger. If we spar now, we have to accept the fact that we might lose an eye. And really, that's the main one. I mean, bruising and stuff like that aside, really eyes and things are kind of a big deal. But it just, it can be really fun to do. And I mean, the martial arts should be not only life-preserving, but also life-enhancing, right? They should benefit you in a way beyond preserving your life, especially for people like us who aren't spending all of our time needing to preserve our life. Right? If we're not in that situation, then that particular context is not super necessary. So it should also be life-enhancing, in which sparring and fun drills and things like that have value because they allow us to just enjoy life for the pure sake of enjoying it. Outside of that, my intent is to pursue the context of defense. And that comes with a level of reality that sparring's not going to prepare you for that. I mean, in some ways, the physical skill's not going to prepare you for it. This conversation we're having is probably going to prepare you 10 times more than learning how to swing that stick is. Because having an understanding of what it is and how it works and what happens is far more valuable and effective than knowing how to hit someone. In a lot of ways, if you are to the point that you are laying hands on someone, then a lot of other opportunities for this to go differently have already passed you. Right? Not being in that situation, not doing things that would put you in that situation. Then, after that, maybe you didn't get to choose because it shouldn't have been happening in this situation, but it is happening, or you have no way to avoid being in that situation. Then can you leave that situation? If you can't leave that situation, can you de-escalate that situation? If you can't de-escalate that situation, then you are dealing with it. All of those other steps came first. And if you aren't aware of that context, if you aren't aware of the idea that all of those things took place whether you recognize them or not, then you might train to only deal with that. There's been studies of situations where using examples like Krav Maga or things like that, specifically if taught poorly, because I believe that if it's taught well Anything can be effective if the person teaching it has an understanding of the things we're talking about. But in a lot of cases, in situations like Krav Maga or other types of things that I would term more kind of systems rather than, is everything comes from worst case. They've got a knife to your neck. Here's how you handle it. They're choking you. Here's how you handle it. A lot of things have gone wrong to get you to that point. The reason I bring this up is because there have been studies that have shown that people that train that way all the time sometimes will unintentionally, subconsciously allow that situation to get to that point before they start to handle it. Right, because that's the point I know what to do with. If this happens, I know what to do. We've got a great opportunity to just like leave, throw what you have and take off or whatever. I'm not doing that because that's not what I'm trained to do. One of the people I really admire says, one of the pat answers is we'll just run away. He's going, but nobody ever practices running away. And that should be part of the, if that's what you're going to say, then that should be part of the training. Because if you don't do it, how can you expect it to help you in that time, right? So context.
Homework? We gotta run a marathon.
Well, that's why sometimes when we do drills, should you have some cardio? Absolutely. Should you have some of this stuff? But that's why sometimes just specifically, in fact, I've just straight gotten mad a few times, that either you stay engaged and do something, or I want you to get off the mat. I've told you guys to if you're not going to do that, don't stay in that dangerous space. Either get in and do something, or literally run off to show that was what you chose, because you need to choose it and then execute it. And even if it's just for 3 or 4 steps, that's enough for you to have told your body, this is what I want to do in this situation. Is when I get to this point, maybe I just got you to the ground, I'm going to run. Well, if you go, got you to the ground, I'm looking at you and I'm go, this is when I would run. You've done 0 training. Even 2 steps of turn around and take a step has trained you more to escape than having not done that, by a lot. After that, sheer force of will might cover quite a bit for the first little bit. Just your not wanting to be hurt might give you a little extra boost of cardio than you normally would have. Having some to begin with goes a long way. Knowing the terrain and the environment goes an even further way. Knowing where to go and making good decisions on that. The idea of, if I think I'm in a bad place where someone's following me, maybe I don't immediately go to my house so that's where I've just told them where to go. So now they can come back later and they know where I live. There's things like that. Where you go changes. There's been times where people have left and they've gone I don't feel comfortable, went to friend's house. Then a couple days later, friend's house gets, friends are hurt because that person came back to the place that they were led to go. So all of these kinds of decisions, well, when are you training that with your stick, right? They're not relative to your stick. They are absolutely attached to what you're doing. But a drill of hubad is never going to teach you those things. It's got to be cumulative.
I think that this teaches you to be more responsive to those situations too. You know what I mean? Those unpredictable situations, like you said, rather than just doing this and knowing, okay, this is what I do when I do this. This is, okay, I've already trained this. I'm already fluid doing this. Now I know what to do here. And teaches you to put it all together in a thing. So another advantage of that. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, and the idea of not stopping. Right?
Yeah, not stopping.
Just simple thing of, for the next 2 minutes, I want you to be able to go without just plain stalling out and not doing anything at all. Even if you got to fill that space, can you stay in motion? Just that alone is a useful skill to have. Can I stay in motion when things aren't going the way I expected? That's a big one. That's a big thing to be able to do. And then I actually, every single one of these, I've just kind of wished that the song is actually 7 minutes long, and sometimes I'm I just like to leave it going. Because the creativity happens when you get past, everybody's been going about 2 minutes. 2 minutes, minute and a half, you were mentally thinking about what was going on. 2+. It's time to get creative because I'm running out of stuff, right? And some of the things, it was level changes. I think you were the first person to do some level changes, but you didn't do them for a minute and a half. It wasn't until the very end that you started doing it, that you started, You were thinking in diversity, and then you're like, hey, I've done all of this stuff, and then you expanded the diversity to go, where could I go else than that, right? And that's another thing to know, is that if you go, I'll do Carenza for 30 seconds every day, that's a good thing to do. 30 seconds is never going to lead to those times where you actually push outside of your habits. Habits will happen in 30 seconds. In the next minute will be things we've done recently that are near to mind, and then after that, it's you got to reach further back. What are other things that we've done that maybe we haven't done recently? And you go further back than that. And so the longer you do Carenza, the more comes out, because you break past those times. And now it's time for Matt to do Carenza.
Hey.
And remember, you're gonna stay up here. Yeah. With the freedom of movement where you need to be. And time.
Okay, so Matt should go first every time so we can all take cliff notes real quick beforehand. No, it was very, very good at showing the breadth and depth of your knowledge on it. Also realized while you were going, I done messed up and never switched hands. So good job.
Though I'll note to that, earlier when everybody was going, I gave that direction. I didn't specifically intend for that to be a thing here. So it was not I screwed up by not doing it. Earlier you were doing it, and that was the guide that I gave you. Here it was free. So if it never happened, that's okay.
But yeah, no, overall it's very good. A lot of variance, a lot of good movement in there. Definitely a very wide knowledge base that you're pulling from, so it's very good stuff.
Yeah. Not a single second is wasted. Like, you just use even little moves to hit a strike and then move on to something different. Like, okay, I'm building up to then make a bigger strike, but I can totally fit a retake in there. And that's what I like. And you're redirecting the energy of the stick. That's really, it looks really cool, honestly. But it has a really good purpose. So that those are the two things, that you don't waste any time. You really fit even just little strikes into every single nuance just to make that person regret attacking you. And I like that.
I like the way that was said.
Feel regret yet? I know.
3 things. 1, since he was right, never stepped on that one mat. 2, that was awesome. And 3, I don't want to ever have to fight you.
I saw a lot of hand changes and a few elbows and a lot of strikes, a lot of blocks. I like how you tried to put in everything, block, strikes, that stuff. It was good.
Yeah. First off, that very first hand switch, that was smooth. It just was suddenly in your other hand, and I love that. And those moments when it happens, it's very cool. I noticed there was a lot of exploration of hand switching today. You went through a variety of different ways to get it to your other hand, and grip changes. You weren't always coming from a punya forward grip. You would work into that, and I find it's something that I've noticed for myself as well, that in conjunction with hand changes, like weapon changing hands and grip changing from forward to reverse, has a connection, and I saw you exploring that. I would definitely agree with that. The other thing that I saw was a lot of there would be moments where you were exploring specific sections of the 21 strikes. Which was cool, because there were times that you would just find, and it was like, okay, there's in order 2 or 3, but from things that you don't normally do very often, or at least we don't normally do very often when and found. Especially, it specifically became noticeable when you dropped and worked. I would say, I'd have to go back to look to see if it was the 12-13 or the later set, but the double drop to the feet, that sort of thing. Certain things would repeat, like thrusting into the reverse thrust, a 6 into a 7. And it's funny, I tend to do the same thing. The most natural follow-up to a 6 feels like a 7 most of the time. And yeah, really good constant movement. I liked that very much. You do have a very forward progression to footwork. The idea of an ebb and flow, not so much. It's up to you to decide how you feel about that. It's the way you fight, right? That's not a judgment, that's an observation. Tends to be, if I move back, it's just for a little bit, then it's aggressive. I will accept this, and then I will deal with it in this way. I know that you work Carenza a lot. And I think that anyone in here can see the result of that. Carenza looks different when you work it a lot. You mentioned earlier, to Gage, I could see your opponent. I do think that's a thing. If someone is visualizing someone or something that they're doing, you can see them do it. So when I mentioned, I know if you're visualizing or not, that's why. You can see it. It's different. It looks different. It feels different. And to Will's point, Carenza does show the depth of your skill. I think it's one of the best ways to express what's going on. What do you have available to you? What are you comfortable with? What are you not very good at? The depth of it. As we went, every person had a different expression, and part of that was just level of experience and time in doing those other things. And the more you blend those in, the more it becomes a thing that happens, and then your Carenza becomes something that is not just forward and back, 1s and 2s, then 3, 4, 5, then 1s and 2s, 3, 4, 5. I am not upset anytime I see lots of 1s and 2s, because they're just the most prevalent thing. If you watch my Carenza, you will see a lot of 1s and 2s, because it's a thing that we do very prevalent. If I want to hit the high line, that's a very common and powerful way to do it. but then there's exploration into other things. Yeah, it's very good. For you.
So I do find myself doing a lot of the same things over and over again. There's the, stir the pot to this movement, to the redondo, but I think that it's fast, I like that movement. It's a quick one, you know what I mean? People don't see it coming. And I find myself doing it a lot, and I try to break it, but it just keeps coming back. The 6 to 7, when I first learned that, it was dig in, cut, dig in again, so that's kind of what I think about when I do that every time. It's not 2 movements, it's 1 movement, that flows into the next one. But I do that a lot. Let's go move.
It's a good move.
Let's go move, I try to break it up, but like I said, I just like certain things.
Yeah. So what were you
and
thinking about when you did it? Like, what was
I
your
thinking?
Yeah. What do you think about when you do Carenza, or what were you thinking about when you did this Carenza?
This one in particular, I don't know.
Probably because it's
Nothing
different. I
really.
imagine it's different
Like,
every time.
I just kind of let go, honestly, and I do, and that's what comes out. We used to do a lot of like rindori and things like that with 3 people coming at you. You know what I mean? And you don't have time to react. You just move, and so I just kind of let that go and just move. Sometimes things come in. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I should drop this level. Like little instances, like something a little bit different, and then I just move. So I don't really think terribly a lot unless we're just doing it in the beginning of class or something like that. Then I try to think about different ways to switch my hands. What am I doing? How can I move this? How can I improve this? And then I move on to the next thing. And then I throw that in there with it to be able to flow and things like that. So that's kind of the thinking on that. But like in front of everybody, I just kind of let it go. So.
Sure. Nice. This clap is for everybody. That's what you do. Sir.
Will you go?
Will I go? I suppose I could do. I had already decided I wasn't going to go, but I will go, because you asked. But I'm not going to do it in socks.
You want to slide around?
Oh, is this the stick I'm using? Okay.
Gage, grab your chapstick.
We'll go back here. And, all right, I guess you'll just be in charge of when I will not be doing any more.
sir. A little bit, half past 2. I think you got just about everything in there. Wow.
I like how you went through like different parts of the art. You didn't like do one thing. You went through different things. I thought that
Gage.
was really cool.
Oh, shoot. I love how you went through different things and you didn't just stick to one thing. Like you went through all the different parts of the art. I also liked you had like I could tell you had one person and you didn't ever lose track of that one person. But yeah, I thought that was really cool.
I liked how close the stick was to your body. It's not out there. Nothing is out there. It's just all close. And it makes your movements really, really fast. And I had something else, but I forgot. When it comes to mind, I'll say it.
I'm not sure if it was a conscious decision or an unconscious one, but I noticed you used elements of the positive aspects of critiques you gave all of us.
Oh, interesting. If I did, then it was unconscious.
Yeah, because it was the change in variance and tempo, as well as the smooth, deliberate movements and all of that. So that was trippy.
Yeah, if I had a guess, if I wanted to be a psychologist for a minute, I would probably make the guess that I did it because we talked about it, but I talked about it because it's things that stand out to me. Maybe, right? The psychologist in me says that's probably what it is I probably picked up on when you did those things because those are the things that I like.
Yeah. No, very cool.
Interesting. All right.
Well, like I said, I don't think you missed much on there. Well, you could have went to the lower half of the body, but.
I agree with that. I agree with
So,
that.
you know,
That was
it could've
something
gone
I
on, but-
specifically noticed during. I was like, I really haven't dealt with low strikes as much, and you probably
good.
noticed a shift in when I did.
I did.
Yeah.
Saw some Balinto walk in there a little bit, snapping and coming back a little bit, a lot of the things that, some throwback stuff, so I haven't seen in a while. That was cool. That was super cool.
It's funny, that particular thing, that's what we were going to do today. Then we went this direction.
Yeah.
So maybe Monday we'll do that.
Cool. Very cool. I love watching you move all the time. It's great. Great representation of the art.
I remember the inviting. You invite them to do something, and I'm like, yeah, if they would do it, I know there's a follow-up. You don't do that for no reason. You just like luring them, and then you hit them. So it's kind of like Matt's philosophy. Like, I'm gonna make you regret attacking me. That's it.
But I'm going to give you the opportunity not to do it. Like, you don't have to do this.
Yeah.
And if you do.
I like how you use not just the hand with the stick in it, the hand without anything. And you were like, get over here, don't run away, hit. And I loved how you didn't stay at one level of height. You went up, you kind of shifted a little. I really liked it.
One thing I noticed right in between, you drew the strike. So you drew the strike in, and you Sagong parried it very close. So it was here, and then you drug it down, and then hit down. I really liked that one. That was super cool. I was out there and watched that. I'm like, whoa, that was, ow.
When I saw you come into them, you were like that. I was like, ooh, that would not feel good.
That was a very close Sagong parry too. Like she said, it was super tight the whole time. It was like a super close Sagong, and right as that passed, you pulled your hand up, grabbed that, and then came back down. It was very brutal. You don't need the mic yet. Yeah.
There was one moment that I hoped you guys saw. Is there was a moment where I decided to leave it in. I did a thing, I didn't feel good with it. So I did that thing 5 times. It was on an angle 4. The delivery of managing an angle 4 felt clunky, and so I did. Since we had talked about it this was one moment I did specifically think about the fact that we had talked about it is we had talked about the fact that when I do this on my own, if I feel something that doesn't feel good, I isolate it and I continue to repeat it, then I blend it back in. And so I specifically, when I hit one of those, I went, okay, yeah, we'll go ahead and stick with this for a minute and work through it, because I wanted you to see that it's okay to do that. It's okay to find yourself doing diagnostic to your own skill and troubleshooting and working through, how do I fix what's happening here, or how do I become more comfortable with it, or even sometimes the first one, it was, it didn't really like that. The second one was like, okay, that's probably fine. It was fixed. 3, 4, and 5 were, let's refine it, make it better. Can I make it smoother? Can I make it faster? Can I make it more powerful? Can we do those things? So I wanted you guys to see that. Yeah, I appreciate your comments. This is actually very good for me. There's a lot more to this art than I showed. In fact, there was times while I was doing it that I was like, there's so many things that I want to spend time on, but I'm like, yep, they don't exist right now. Can't think of them. Yep. And that's okay too. I want you guys to hear this. Like, if there's a thing that you're like, this. If it didn't come to mind, it didn't come to mind.
You can't compress all of Kali down to 2 minutes.
No, you can't. You cannot. You cannot.
There's stuff I've been thinking about all week, and I didn't pull any of it out, you know what I mean? Even stuff I was pulling out earlier, I didn't end up going there, things I was thinking about earlier. What about this, just didn't come out. That's representation, like I said, I just lose myself. It's like this Zen moment, and that's almost what fighting feels like, and it's like, okay, I'm here, now.
I agree with
you're
that.
not completely blanked out, but you're
No, you're not, because you can see different
having
things.
certain.
I noticed that as I was moving, notice where I was. I noticed that I was having an audience. I could see that there was a person that had kind of stopped to kind of watch. I couldn't let that stop me, but it doesn't stop you from acknowledging a thing and then continuing.
Right.
Right? Like, I don't have to do something with it. A thing can exist, and I can recognize its existence and still not actually let it affect me in any way. And I think that's its own skill. So I agree. I tend to have the same thing, that idea that things kind of turn off for a while, and I get very right here while I do that. But I'm not gone, right?
It's very Zen. Everything and nothing. Nothing is everything.
Yeah. And
Doing Carenza is just finding new stuff.
finding new stuff.
Because lately, at the beginning of class, I've been doing it, and I've been doing Soridaya a couple of times, and I found a lot of stuff I haven't seen ever before. Which is
That's awesome. I think that's great. And finding things that you explore, you'll find things, and there might be things that later we talk about and you're like, yep, I knew this was a thing. Been doing it for a while, but now it's nice to actually talk about it, because I just,
That's something you teach.
Then for me, one thing I like to do, which I didn't do a lot of, but what I like to do when I'm doing it on my own, is I like to also attach myself to the rhythm of the music. If the music speeds up, I like to speed up. If the music slows down, I like to slow down. If it has ups and downs or different waves, then I like to try to find those. I like to try to predict those, and I like to try to see if my predictions were accurate. I feel like it's going to become faster now. So I start to speed up with it. And then it feels really weird if you suddenly speed up but the music slows down. So it also kind of gives you a little bit of that ability, maybe not ability, the experience of trying to predict and then assess whether or not your prediction was right. But then also blending in rhythm changes and things, because fights happen the same way too. Someone might hit a few times really hard, but then they slow down because it took a lot of energy for them to do that. But then they pick back up because they were able to, or whatever. And so having that ability to change up and down and move in and out of rhythm and timing, I really like doing Carenza to music for that reason. I'll do Carenza without music plenty. But when I do it with music, I like to specifically include the music when I can. If there's a heavy particular beat, then that might be the strike of power. I might be moving 3 or 4 hits, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Having that as the beat hits hard, then I hit hard. Not stopping and going, oh, wait, hit, wait, hit, but going, can I break that beat into 4 counts or 8 counts or whatever, and continue and then add in that moment. That is a way that I have over time expressed my training, how I have tried to take me further without having somebody to take me further available to me, that's some of the ways that I have done it for myself, is music.
Music's very helpful.
I think so. I think so. Yeah, that's it. I think we're out of time. I think this was a great class.